Hi everybody, welcome to the fourth episode of Come Back to the Sacred Nature of Birth. Today I want to talk about the cascade of interventions in a bit not usual way. So I'm not going to talk only about the most common process that evolves into the cascade of interventions, but also about some smaller, subtle disturbances that can lead to strong and really huge interventions in your birth process. So we tend to present the emergency C-section as an operation that saves life. And while yes, there are examples when it is true, I'm really sad how really little discussion there is on why it was even needed. I don't agree with the fact that we just take it for granted that it was life-saving and we don't delve deeper into why it was even needed. Because we usually just observe the peak of the iceberg and saying, okay, the woman was in such situation, then the C-section was necessary. But why this peak? This peak situation happened. What was before, what was before the peak of the iceberg? And this is what I want to talk about today. So what we know now as the most classic scenario of cascade of interventions, and it is really a classic scenario. It's not an exaggeration. It's really so common when we. And I was working with women who experienced traumatic births, and I'm telling you, almost all of the birth stories were some variation of this scenario, of this classic scenario of a cascade of interventions. It is so common right now. So usually it starts, and I will tell you today that it doesn't start with induction, but we usually speak about it as if it starts with labor induction. So usually it's a synthetic oxytocin, and then now that we know that the synthetic one is not really processed quite the same way as the natural oxytocin, and it produces much stronger and much more painful contractions, then very often the woman is not capable of standing it for a long time, so she's asking for an epidural. And because it's an anesthesia and you lose you lose part of your feeling of your body, so you are less connected to your body, you are less connected to how it's supposed to move in the birth. It has many consequences, but usually it also leads to a bit slower rhythm of the birth, and weakened pushing, and then very often a reaction to this is a need for another stimulation. So sometimes you can get another shot of oxytocin, of the synthetic one, and if it continues, it's such a dance that the birth is getting longer and is prolonged, and the woman is becoming very, very exhausted. And then in the end, what the doctors suggest is C-section. Sometimes it ends up more painfully, so with a vacuum or forceps. So nowadays, even many midwives already speak about this cascade of interventions. It is an officially coined term, but what we don't speak about is why the labor was inducted. Like, what was the reason? And today I'm not gonna focus on the induction that happens before your due date, but I want to show you why do we even go for the use of synthetic oxytocin. So let's look at smaller, more subtle interventions that happen before the synthetic oxytocin takes place. So it might sound crazy for you, but even counting your contractions can be something that is counterintuitive to the birth process, and that triggers your neocortex activity, and instead of bringing you to your body, bringing to your feeling, to your intuition, it actually helps you to stay here, and it even demands from you to stay here because you need to count. So like there is no bigger rush, like there is nothing more rational than counting. And so you need to be focused. It's really, I even experienced it in my first birth, that I counted for some time before I ditched it, but it demanded so much focus and attention from me. It completely didn't support me feeling, moving, and being one with my body. Then continuous fetal monitoring in the hospital, it can also become something that can easily disconnect you from your body. So all of the procedures, like connecting you to a machine or inserting an IV, can act as something that disconnects you from your body. And I hear it from many women who had traumatic births, that it was the moment when they had an IV inserted that they started to feel like their body was just a machine that was about to give birth, that they, as one being with the body, they as humans disappeared. It was the body treated as a machine. What else can be a disturbance that leads to the need of using synthetic oxytocin? Rational language, and I spoke about it in the last video, that it is even the questions that you're gonna be asked, by your midwife or in the hospital, that need to provide a medical history information. It's all too much for the brain activity in the birth process. It all really disturbs the natural birthing process. Checking dilation is a big one, and I'm gonna record another separate video about it because there is a much discussion around it, and there are already proofs that it's completely not based on any medical research, and it's actually completely plus. I know it's strong words, but if you're gonna see this video, you will understand it. That even midwives, the midwives that are really grounded, they speak about it. They do confirm it, that it's a procedure that helps them in some ways, but doesn't help the women, the birthing women, for sure. So imagine it. You are supposed to be in this primal movement, in this connection from the outside world, turning inward, and how it even comes together with someone putting fingers in your vagina. And usually it's also very painful. It doesn't have to be, but usually it's painful. Like how it even goes together, it doesn't go together. It obstructs this process. Now we know that oxytocin and adrenaline work in opposition. So whenever there is stress reactions, the oxytocin release is reduced. The levels of oxytocins are reduced. So everything that is going to be even a bit stressful for the birthing woman can already dismiss the most important hormone in your birth, can already obstruct the release of the most important hormone in the birth, and which levels are so essential to everything, including avoiding the hemorrhage after the birth, and producing enough milk for your baby. So it has a full, it's a full cascade. It's not only an intervention, the stress is not only disrupting your birth, but it also has many consequences after the birth, on healing your body, on assisting your child with in growing. Now we also know that there is something like mirror neurons, right? So the research shows that adrenaline is contagious. So we can understand easily that in a hospital setting or even in a home birth, whenever there is someone stressed around us, so if the medical assistant is stressed, is tense, the woman will feel it and can very easily mirror it. I've also read in some of the Michel Odon's books that even the change of the microbiome, so when we're transferring from the home to the hospital, even the change of the microbiotic environment can trigger stress for our body. So maybe consciously, rationally, we don't really understand it, but our bodies do feel the difference. And then melatonin oxytocin cocktail is released while in darkness. So it's also important when it comes to the bright light that we know that usually is used in hospitals. Now there is more awareness about it, and very often the lights are dim in the birthing rooms, but it is something that can obstruct even a home birth, the use of strong light. So it's for sure it's not all the interventions. There are many more, I'm sure of, but I just wanted to show you how subtle it is, how in such a subtle way, how the big cascade of interventions that finishes in C-section can really start. And it is something to keep in the back of your mind, that it doesn't start with synthetic oxytocin. It starts much earlier. So the second video that I'm going to invite you to, it's all about cesarean section in a full spectrum. So I'm going to talk about consequences that are very rarely discussed. Why? Not to scare anyone, not to ride on fear, not to produce more fear, not to add up for sure to the fear, but to raise really consciousness, because I think it's not fair that we speak about C-section as an complete alternative to the natural birth, as an equal alternative to the natural birth. And it's not only because of the healing of the mother, but there are many consequences for the baby, for the child, for the bond, and also for the mother. So next video is going to be all about it. See you there.